teachers at Reddit, what was the best lateness excuse you ever heard? I teach at a university. But this was from my high school years. My sister had just gotten her learner's permit that week and was driving to school for the first time. With me riding shotgun, required licensed 18-year family member etc. We came up to a very sharp intersection, something like a 135-degree hairpin turn. And the light turned yellow. My sister asked me what to do. And I said to stop for it, not liking the odds of a complete noob driver trying to do that turn of speed with me on the outside. She stopped. Quickly. The Mercedes behind us didn't. Everyone except the Mercedes was okay. But it snarled traffic up pretty badly for a while. I drove the rest of the way to school. The crash totaled the Mercedes, but just dented the back cargo door in the Blazer we were in. And waited in line as student after student checked in late at the office with there was an accident on the way to school. Our excuse was we were the accident on the way to school. I teach preschool. Student walked in and looked a bit shaken. She told the class she had been hit by a car in a calm voice. English was her second language. Some people were confused and didn't think she had been a pedestrian struck by a vehicle. Not 5 minutes later, a police officer, paramedics, and the school nurse come in and usher her away. Apparently she got hit. Got up off the ground and sprinted into school. Semicolon. She had a minor concussion and we didn't see her for a week or so. Years ago I had a student come in who had missed the test the previous week. He said a while back he had been shot in the head and they were unable to remove the bullet in the previous week it had started shifting and he was in the hospital. Showed me the scans of his head and everything. Also, right now another student's friend let me know that he is in jail for a few weeks and asked me if I could please not drop him as he wants to stay in the class. I'm a TA and last semester a student emailed me saying he would be late to class because he got bit by a squirrel. There was also a different student who came to class with a baby turtle he found one day, on time though. It's possible I was teaching a class full of misfit Disney princesses. Genuine real excuse from an older student. I'm gonna be late every day because I'm on house arrest and walking to and from school I always have to stop at my girlfriend's and see my baby for a few minutes. I'm still trying to figure out why he had to be late. But maybe they put a time on his walks or something. Made me sad to see he had an ankle monitor and everything. I once signed my daughter in late to elementary school. And the parent before me had put UFO sighting in the reason for tardiness box. My school starts as early as 7:30 for some students. By public transit, 70% of my school qualifies for free reduced lunch. It can be upwards of 2 hours to get to school. Those students have pretty legitimate reasons for lateness. I had one student a few years ago come late because his father had been murdered a few days earlier. I didn't expect him to show up at all. But his mom wanted him to go back to school. He just didn't get there on time. I had another late because her family had been evicted. Her parents had to work. So she was figuring out where to store their stuff. There was a traffic jam at the underground. Primary teacher here, teaching 11-year-olds. Kid comes in 30 minutes late because he was waiting for his lead shoes to finish charging. Turns out he was not lying and proceed to moonwalk over to his chair with his shoes flashing. Couldn't even be mad, it was too cool stupid at the same time. Just heard this one last week. I'm sorry I was late. I have diarrhea. Truth or lie? You have to respect bathroom problems. Not a teacher. But in the 3rd grade I had to give a presentation in social studies class. We got to read our presentations off of a piece of paper. My dog ate half of that paper the morning I was supposed to deliver said presentation. I was hysterical because I didn't think my teacher would believe that my dog ate my homework excuse. My dad wrote a note for my teacher, please excuse Gxminifx as her dog really did eat her homework. I had a late student because he was getting a fine for tossing his cigarette butt on the ground right outside school. I teach adults. I remember this from 11th grade. Our history class was right after lunch. The class started with a quiz. So everyone was quiet. This big guy comes in like 15 minutes late. He goes over to our male teacher and whispers something in his ear. The teacher repeats it, but a little bit louder so that it was audible. And the teacher says, "The cafeteria lady sold you an all-bread stromboli?" Yes. The cafeteria lady had indeed sold him an all-bread stromboli, with no meat and cheese in it. So he had to go back and ask for another one. Sit down and eat it. Which was why he was late for class. That's not an excuse. That's a legitimate reason for being late. Not sure if this applies, but a teacher was telling us about how important it was to hand in our essays until the end of the week. We had to hand 2 essays per week. While she was talking about how she wouldn't accept tardiness, there was this only one exception when she accepted it on the following week. Turns out a student was mugged on his way to school. He ended up losing his backpack with everything inside, including the essays, phone, wallet, socks and shoes. The student ended up going to talk to the teacher barefoot and crying, telling her how he tried even to persuade the assailant to let him get the essays out of his backpack, but to no avail. Call-ins. But still. Forgot to turn off my effing heater. Somebody stole my tires and put my truck on blocks. And gotta find my damn dentures. Those things are expensive are my favorites. Edit. Not a teacher, but this is one of my favorite stories to tell from freshman year of high school. Some kid showed up really late to class and told our teacher that he was in the bathroom and the trash can was on fire. We all sat there in disbelief and we all went to look out the door to see a bunch of smoke in the hallway. Then we see a security guard run out of the bathroom with a smoking trash can in his hands. Turns out some genius was smoking in the bathroom and threw their cigarette in a trash can full of flammable objects. Still was a pretty funny situation though. I work in South Korea and had a 5th grader say he was late because he caught a whale, which is a local euphemism for getting circumcised. When I was in college, a kid showed up nearly an hour late to our final exam. His excuse: "I was in jail until about 25 minutes ago." Not a teacher, but my senior year of high school. I drove home on my lunch period because I left my homework on my desk as home. Halfway home, the elderly man in front of me veered off the road and drove into a telephone pole. I stopped to make sure he was okay and for police to show up. He wanted me to help push his car off to the side of the road, but couldn't understand that his axle was snapped in two and buried about 4 inches into the pavement. I overheard the conversation with the police and he was definitely on some medication and should not have been driving. My teacher was cool about it and actually let me grab lunch from the cafeteria and eat in class too, since I was going to grab lunch on the way back, but couldn't. Not teacher, but student. Kid that was always fking around rolled into class 30 minutes late, totally disheveled. With wild eyes he claimed he fell down the stairs and blacked out. Teacher didn't believe him, but that FK was covered in dust all over his back, so who knows. I'm sorry I was late. I was running late. Why are you late? I'm no expert, but I think it's because I didn't get here on time. Had a classmate bring in her fender once. The professor just nodded and continued class without comment. Edit. Fender is part of your car. Often heard in the term fender bender to describe a mild car accident. Sorry I'm late. My best excuse: I have poor time management. Teacher said he was ready to yell at me for any excuse I had, but he had nothing for that. I would give a fellow student a ride to school every day in high school, and he was never awake when I pulled up to his house to pick him up. I felt bad that I was writing his name as my excuse for being late every day, and didn't want to embarrass him. I eventually resorted to absurd excuses that the office and principal seemed to understand as code for it being this kid's fault. Most of my excuses were something along the lines of UFO attack, grandma got ran over by a reindeer, Bigfoot sighting, car was taken and had to wait for Liam Neeson to bring it back. Whatever I thought was funny each morning. Kid had a tough home life and principal agreed if I could get into school every day it was okay if I was late. Edit. Whoa. I just want to thank all of you for all of the things you've said to me. I've had a difficult few days. And all of the nice things you've said really made me smile. I knew a guy in high school who came in 40 minutes late after lunch and said sorry I was at Subway and they got my sandwich wrong. There's one Subway in our school town and it was about 30 minutes away at the other end of the high street. I'm a teacher. This year I have a student who comes in halfway through first period literally every single day. I finally got on his case about why I try not to pry but my god. And he finally admitted that he didn't like waking up to an alarm. So he doesn't. He just eventually wakes up and comes to school. I needed to take a dump before I came to class. So I did. The bathroom was out of toilet paper. It took this long for someone to take pity on me and find me some. Sorry I was late. It's just kind of the way I am. It will happen again. Hey man. I get it. Not a teacher but once my classmate wrote my pigeon laid an egg as an excuse on his latte combing slip. In high school, 2 girls asked to go to the bathroom at the beginning of drama class, which is a 45-minute class. The teacher let them go. They came back with 5 minutes left in class, holding McDonald's bags. The teacher cocked an eyebrow and asked what took them so long. One girl sighed and said there was just a really long line for the bathroom. Well, they didn't say which bathroom they were going to. My brother told the teacher a man with a gun ran into the road and stopped his car making him late. It was a cop directing traffic. Me. Walks in an hour late when there was already a 90-minute delay for snow. Teacher. How can you be this late? Me. Well you see. My garage door was literally frozen shut this morning. So I just kinda went back to sleep to give it time to thaw. Teacher. I used this one as a kid. My dad ate my homework. In 7th grade for French class. I had to make a homemade French dish. I chose croissants as I was 12 and anything else would have been way too complicated. I made them with my mom after dinner and sometime after I went to bed. My dad ate like 6 of them. Which meant I didn't have enough for the class. So on the way to school, I had to stop at Dunkin' Donuts and replace the ones my dad ate. One of my teachers told that a girl came in late and claimed there had been a bomb attack next door to her home and that the road was blocked. We live in Finland so the story was an obvious lie. Except it wasn't. There had been a bomb at the police station next to her home. The only of its kind in decades. Not a teacher. But I always kept Rice Krispie treats in my backpack and gave my math teacher one every time I was late. I forgot one day when walking into class and got a nice loud ahem. I think you forgot to put something on my desk. It was fking legit. While my dad was teaching one day a student came in at 10:30 instead of 8:45 when school started. When my dad asked why the student was so late they replied the liquor store didn't open until 10. My dad teaches 10-year-olds so this excuse made almost no sense until my dad looked over to his desk and saw the big bottle of Baileys sitting there with a bow on it. The student's parent was a family friend and wanted to give my dad a gift. Obligatory not a teacher. But I had a friend who was late to first period Spanish class every day of senior year. One day, the teacher had enough and told him he was going to be marked as absent if he was late again. Lo and behold, he's abnormally late the next day, but almost kicks down the door with how excited he is about his excuse. He was rear-ended just outside of the school by the math teacher, who only hit my friend's car because he himself was rear-ended by another student at the same school. And if that situation wasn't enough, while the 3 drivers were exchanging info, someone waltzed up to the cars, hopped in the backmost one, and took off with it down the street. Semicolon. Needless to say, my friend wasn't marked absent that day. A freshman girl with a junior brother was late. She said her brother was taking forever in the shower in the morning. I can't figure out why it takes him so long. He has short hair. What is he doing in there? He does this all the time? Office staff was cracking up when she left. Not a teacher. But in my class back in university. One of my colleagues came to class 1 hour late. The professor said something like, "So what's your excuse? Did your building explode or something?" Turns out her building actually collapsed, 15 stories high, killing multiple people, and she lost everything. Mandatory weekly drug testing took longer than expected. Not a teacher. But used this one this morning. Oh my time to shine for once. Last year I had an early class with very unmotivated students. So many of them were late that instead of letting them enter quietly, the new rule was, tell me your excuse and if it's reasonable I'll let you in. Never refuse someone. It was just to reduce the problem. So this one time a cute student arrived like 40 minutes late and pulls me aside and then he says I'm not gonna lie. I was home ready to leave and then my girlfriend asked me to come by her place after class, so I had to shave before leaving. Cute me. Arto Shava. Cute him. Staring awkwardly below his waist. Will you know? When I was 16 my deployed older brother's GF moved in with my family. She and I were both in the NJROTC program. She was a senior and I freshman. We had this mini boot camp thing one Saturday. And she was the CEO running things. Well, right before I was to leave to go check in, someone called and told me they had found her lost cat. So I go pick up her lost cat. Then drive to the school where the boot camp is being held. I walked into the building holding her cat. But now almost an hour late. She sees my face first and starts off screaming at me. "Fevelm. You are over an hour early." Then she sees I'm holding her cat, stops abruptly and just explodes into a mess of sniffles and runs and grabs her cat out of my arms. Didn't get into trouble for being late. The students, it was a group known for being troublemakers, claimed it was because the fire department wouldn't let them pass on their normal route and they had to go around. Because the local flower shop was on fire. Looked out the window after class. The classroom was on the other side of the school from the flower shop. And lo and behold, there were the firefighters dousing the cinders that used to be the flower shop. Not even someone I know. Just the best excuse I've ever heard of. When I walked out of my house I walked through a spider web. And I couldn't find the spider, so I had to take another shower. I remember a guy when I was in the 10th grade would be late every time there was an election because he was over 18 and could vote. But as an adult I've heard so many lame excuses from people who work for me. To be honest, I'm more willing to be forgiving if it isn't a pattern and if they are sincere when they tell me that there is no excuse. Edit 1. A lot of people are asking how many elections there were. I remember hearing it twice. But my memory is foggy because it was back in the day and a whole lot of years ago. But just checking the elections history of 1998 in my state. There were 2 state questions, SQs, in that year, one regarding sales tax usage and another regarding a casino. In addition to these, the primary election was in July, which would have been during summer vacation. The runoff elections in August and the state election in November. So in theory, he could have voted 5 times that year alone. But again, I remember hearing it twice and it was probably the ones in August and November. Not me, but a teacher I knew. Had a high school freshman that was late because he forgot he had high school and went to his middle school. Kid actually sat in a class before realizing he was at the wrong school. He had the visitor's pass his middle school gave him as proof. Teacher kept the middle school visitor's pass as proof of that lateness story. Kevin? Had to finish my blunt first. Followed by in-school suspension. Not a teacher. There was a kid who was late pretty much every day. One day I was late. And when I walked in I said to the teacher, "Sorry. I'm being Mike for Halloween," so she let me slide. That being said, I was like 3 minutes late. Everyone laughed. Except Mike, who died a little on the inside. At least he would have. He didn't show up for another 9 minutes.